Alright, we've got another piecewise function that has three parts. And again, we'd like to know for what values of c does the limit as x approaches c exist. Alright, so firstly, we need to make sure that we get the graph correct. And of these three functions, the first and the last should be pretty easy to graph because those are parent functions. The middle functions are going to be a little bit more to it because it's going to be the parent function cosine with two transformations. So I'm actually going to start by graphing this one. I want to spend a little more time on that one, and then I can come back to the others. So for these, we certainly need to remember the parent function for sine and cosine. Alright, so the middle one, 1 minus cosine of x, is going to be cosine of x, but reflected over the x-axis and shifted up 1. So looking at my values over here, this can be 0, of course, and I'll make this pi, 2 pi. And let's make this be 1. Since I'm going to shift it up 1, I want to give myself a little bit of space here. Okay, so the cosine graph would look like, it's a very rough sketch, but that's what the cosine graph looks like. I want to reflect that over the x-axis. So instead, it's going to be like that. And then I can think of the plus 1. So if I shift this point up 1 and this point up 1, any point that you want to look at can be shifted up 1. Up 1, up 1, up 1, up 1. Alright. So that actually represents, it's not the greatest, but it's good enough to see what's going on. This represents 1 minus cosine of x. Now, since this is a piecewise function, I really only want to keep the values between 0 and pi radians, so that would be from here to here. So, any of that. I would like my graph back though. I erased just a little bit too much. Alright, let's try this one more time. Okay, that's pretty good. Except that I did it again. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Try not to erase the x and y axis again. So now cosine, well, cosine is just the parent function, so this is really one that we should memorize. Going to use it enough that it's worth our time. So there's the full cosine graph, except that of course it goes forever to the left and forever to the right. But for this particular piecewise function, I want where the x values are greater than pi. So from here to the right, so none of that stuff. All right, and then the first one, sine, also a parent function. So it goes through the origin, and it would look like this for that period. But I'm not going to graph any of that anyway, so I'll go over here. I wasn't going to keep any of that for my parent function anyway, or for my piecewise function. Alright, so this is matching up with this, but forever to the left. So where the x values are less than 0, so now that matches up. Alright, so I think my piecewise function looks good. Back to the question. The limit as x approaches c, where does that exist? For what values of c does that exist? So if you watched the last video on the last question, same idea. Many of these, or most of these places that value of c does work. The limit from the left here and the limit from the right here works. So that's a location. Limit from the left is the same as the right. So there's another value of c that works. Most of these are going to work. I only see one place where the limit from the left and the right is not the same. And that would be right here at pi. The limit as x approaches pi from the left looks to be 2. And the limit from the right, the limit as x approaches pi from the right appears to be -1. So those aren't the same. So almost all c work. I want to say everything except when c equals pi.